Welcome back, everybody. Today it's 89 degrees in the shade and it's 111 degrees inside my tent. So in today's video, I wanted to take this EcoFlow Wave 2 system and Delta 2 Max and see if I can bring the temperature down in that tent and make it comfortable enough for me to sleep in it tonight. It's been a super hot day today with a high of almost 95 degrees Fahrenheit. It's currently 89 degrees and I think the low is going to be somewhere around 80 degrees. For me to be comfortable while I'm sleeping, I want the temperature to be between 70 and 75 degrees. But before I can put the air conditioner in the tent, I want to go ahead and re-inflate this thing. This is what the tent looks like after sitting for 2 days without being re-aired. And just like that, the tent's already ready to go again. I wanted to run this experiment with this tent in particular because the tent is actually not very breathable. And since it's not very breathable, it'll hold that cold air much better than my other tent did in my last video. Something just as simple as me opening the tent door has allowed the temperature to already start decreasing. So I think as I get my air conditioner set up in the tent, I'm gonna open the windows for a few minutes to allow the tent to breathe and air out. And 110 degrees in here is almost unbearable. I'm gonna get all 4 of these open, get myself a little bit of breathing space, get the air conditioner in, and see how much cold air I can get from that air conditioner. First things first, I need a good base to put the air conditioner on. And I'm gonna use the back door for the tent so that I can run the exhaust directly out of the tent. That way I make sure I get the highest efficiency from that Wave 2 portable air conditioner. This thing is portable, but it's actually pretty heavy. And guys, I gotta get this thing going before I melt. It is super hot in here. And this setup is not exactly perfect, obviously, but this is about as good as I'm gonna be able to get it to keep this thing sealed up as much as possible. And I've got a limited amount of time before I just start sweating so much that it's unbearable. So let me finish getting this thing set up and then let's get it started. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing turned on now. Take off my hat. That way I can get a little bit of cooling effect because it is still insanely hot in here. 105 degrees Fahrenheit. For tonight's test, I will use as much power as I need to keep this Wave 2 going. I currently have the Wave 2 add-on battery and the EcoFlow Delta 2 Max. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug the Wave 2 into the Delta 2 Max. Move this cable out of the way. One thing I can tell you for sure, no matter how much power this thing uses, putting your head up close to it like this feels perfect right now. I am so sorry for how much I'm sweating, but here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna leave the sensor inside on the cot, basically where it was when I started the test. Then I'm gonna take this one out with me. I'm gonna wait about a half hour, maybe an hour, see if I actually get any results from this air conditioner inside of this tent. Then if it actually gets cool enough for me to come sleep in here, then I will of course come sleep in the tent. So another variable that I could control for would have been to set the tent up in the shade. That way it's not battling the sun. Right now it's still 97 degrees outside and 104 degrees inside of the tent. Well guys, the air conditioner has been running for over 30 minutes and it seems to be struggling just a little bit to lower that temperature. In the shade here where the sensor has been, it's about 91 degrees. And so what I think I'm gonna do is move this fly to try to put it so that it covers the tent so that the tent is in the shade. This is certainly not an ideal situation here. I've got about half of the tent covered in shade. The rest of the tent covers itself in shade. Providing just a little bit of shade gives that tent a fighting chance with the air conditioner. And now I have another place where I can set my thermometer out of direct sunlight. And this is absolutely not a scientific experiment, but it's just something fun I wanted to try with that EcoFlow Wave 2. The EcoFlow Wave 2 portable HVAC unit is a very popular portable system on the market today because it's one of the only ones that is both a heater and an air conditioner and is portable. But the main thing I've learned about it in my use with it over the last year is that it's really only suitable for that one single point of cold air. And that basically means that no matter what I do, I'm only really going to be comfortable at the single point of the exit of the HVAC unit where it's essentially blowing on my skin. Well guys, it looks like I've had some marginal success with that shade. It is 90 degrees outside and according to this, 88 degrees Fahrenheit inside the tent. Let's go inside the tent and see how it feels. Hopefully I didn't get a bunch of ants inside of the tent because you can see ants all up and down the door. I should have absolutely come in here much sooner than I did today because although it says it's 88 degrees Fahrenheit in here, it feels much cooler, especially when I get higher where normally it's hot, the hot air rises. It just feels like the moisture from the humidity has been pulled out of the air. So I think for me, that is one of the major benefits of this system, is that simple ability of this HVAC system to pull some of that moisture out of the air, just making it feel even 10 degrees cooler than it actually is. Humidity just has a massive impact on the quality of the air that you're in. And so for me, that's the major benefit to this EcoFlow Wave 2 system. I currently have the wind just blowing right on my face. It feels amazing. And as it gets cooler, as the sun sets, I would put this in fan mode or take it off of max mode. That way I'm not using so much battery. That is a super important aspect of this setup. Yes, my Wave 2 add-on battery is almost 100% charged right now, but I've used almost 60% of that Delta 2 Max by running the Wave 2 in its max mode. If I was gonna get the maximum cooling capability out of this, I would really wanna set up about 1,000 watts of solar power. That way I could make sure in the hottest part of the day that I had more than sufficient power to keep this thing cooling. So for now, I'm gonna give the system a break. I'm gonna wait a few hours until the sun sets, come out and see if after the sun sets I can use the remaining battery life to stay cool for the rest of the night. All right guys, it's getting a little dark out, but what I wanted to do is make sure that all of my power in here was topped off, and now I'm actually going to take this and go plug it into the Delta 2 Max. That way I'm absolutely positive that I have enough power to get me through the night. And I will be one of the first people to admit that having a lot of power is an absolute benefit when trying to do these off-grid setups. So in my case, I'm very fortunate to have essentially infinite battery supply to make my system work. And you will essentially never hear me complaining about how I've got everything set up. But one of my favorite things to do is do these experiments with these power stations, try them out. Also getting off-road in my Jeep. So if you find that stuff interesting, please consider subscribing and for sure give this video a thumbs up. The only thing that really worries me right now is earlier when I was messing with this door, I saw a very massive spider, and so I'm gonna go ahead and shake that thing before I open it up because that spider could be anywhere. And I know they're not out to necessarily bite you, but I don't want to get bit by a spider messing with my power cables. Now I have what I would consider the ultimate daisy chain setup. I've got the massive power station in my Jeep hooked into the Delta 2 Max, topping that off. And then I've also got the air conditioner plugged into the Delta 2 Max. So between all of those power stations, I feel like I have about 8 kilowatt hours of power, which is more than enough to get me through the night with the air conditioner on max mode. And I just turned the air conditioner back on after a couple of hours of being off. The sun is almost set, and that cold breeze, like I said before, it just feels so good compared to the regular air. One of the biggest gripes that I have with the EcoFlow Wave 2 system is the fact that it uses so much power. But the fact is, if you really plan to use something to change the temperature of the air in a space or a volume this big, you will need quite a bit of power. So it is something that there's just no avoiding. So I'm going to apply the same idea as before. I am going to leave the inside gauge in the tent here, and I'll go ahead and take this outside gauge out with me. But just so you know, it did have the temperature at about 82 degrees Fahrenheit, which although is definitely survivable, any of these temperatures are survivable to sleep in. I want to know, will this thing keep me comfortable for the rest of the night? So I'm going to let this thing cool off just a little more. In about an hour, I'll come back in, I'll lay down, and I'll call it a night. So it's either a typo or something's gone wrong with my sensor here, but it says it's 73 degrees outside, which it does feel like about that temperature, but I don't know if you guys can read that. 49 degrees. So let's get in there and see how cold does that feel. Is it actually 49 degrees? It's almost unbelievable. So I guess I didn't realize when I left the tent, I put the sensor right in front of the vent for the HVAC. Maybe 49 degrees is not realistic, but it is absolutely cold in here. Okay guys, I'm about to head to bed, and I'm gonna set the air conditioner, which is currently on max mode. I'm gonna set it onto manual mode, which is just one notch lower. It's still putting out about 48 degrees or 49 degrees from the outlet, but I'm gonna let it run at a little lower of an output, and I'm gonna get some sleep, and I'll see you guys in the morning. And that's it. The air conditioner ran out of electricity in the middle of the night. I did put it back on max mode because even though it wasn't super hot, it kept me cool in the normal mode. I wanted the full effect of the cooling. I burned out of power within about 2 or 3 hours. So probably around midnight last night, I ran out of power. I'm not muggy, but I can definitely feel like on my face that the cooling effect has worn off. And so I would, really emphasize that the big takeaway for these small EcoFlow Wave 2 systems is if you want to use them and get the maximum cooling effect, they use a lot of power. I burned through probably about 8 kilowatts between when I started the experiment yesterday and when I ran out of power this morning. Overall, I do like the system, but I do know that it takes a lot of power. So for me, this would be better in like a shed or something where you have access to continuous power. You want to keep it going. And then if that's the case, you may be better off getting something like a mini split or a more dedicated permanent solution. So I don't know guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving me a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next episode.